Welcome to the Grief Dreams podcast. My name is Sean Ram alongside Dr. Joshua Black. Another beautiful day for podcasting, and we get a chance to, again, talk with someone about their loss, their grief, and any dreams that they've had after their loved one has passed away. Today, we have on Debi Wobbe, and she is recently retired from 35 years as a dental assistant with expanded function in Northern California. She currently speaks about her experience as the mother of a heart and kidney transplant recipient and as a survivor of the wildfire destruction of her home and her town, Paradise. She is working on a book about this as well. Debi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Obviously, we're here in Canada, and we got a lot of snowfall last night, which is exciting, but also a little bit like, okay, here we go again.
Oh, yeah. Here's winter for you, huh?
There you go. But a good 3 feet. How's it in California right now?
I don't know if I want to admit it. It's like 70 degrees and it's gorgeous.
Oh, that's okay.
We have a little
it gives
cloud
us hope.
cover today.
It gives us a memory of what it used to be a month ago.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Canada's beautiful, so I'm sure.
So, Debi, it's great to have you on. We just had your friend on the last podcast, actually, Suzanne. And so she mentioned you, and she mentioned a dream you had of her daughter. So I'm really excited that we get to have you on so soon and almost like back-to-back episodes to really further that conversation and also talk a little bit about donorship when it comes to that and your journey with your daughter through that whole experience. But first, I want to know, what's it like to be retired? Because I just finished school. I'm just starting my career. So retirement is next on my list of things to do.
Well, I actually, it's a new norm that I'm trying to develop, actually. It's really kind of crazy. I'm a very high energetic, very busy person. My lower body, hips and knees, I've had issues with since I was a child. I was congenitally born with issues. So I've worked for 41 of my 55 years. I really have. But so I'm too young to retire, but yet at the same time, I can't keep doing what I was doing. So I'm kind of branching out into, speaking and doing podcasts and doing what I can do to maybe give back to the donor situation too, the donor transplant donor life.
So what was it like for you to go through that? And can you give us a little backstory on, because it was your daughter, I believe, if I recall.
Yes, my oldest child, my daughter, who's 33 now, when she was 19, her heart failed. We went through several months of nobody realizing what was going on. And then finally, when it was diagnosed, it was pretty serious. She almost died. They managed to get her in a better health situation enough to get her to San Francisco, care flighted her to San Francisco. And then from there, for about 6 years, they treated her for heart failure. And she had been on and off the transplant list once and then put back on and then was transplanted about 6.5 weeks after she was put back on the list. So it was kind of a wild ride there for about 7-8 years.
So what makes someone go on and off? Like, why wouldn't they just stay on?
Well, they actually got her into a healthier state with a pacemaker. They put a valve around, or a leakage kind of valve type thing replacement that helped her not regurgitate as much and have that backflow where you're not supposed to have. And then so she had the open heart surgery to have that, and then she had pacemaker done several times. So they got her in a healthier state enough to actually take her off the transplant list for about 3 years. And then the pacemaker kept coming out. She's very thin. She had no muscle in the chest area, so it kept coming out, kind of trying to extrude from her body. And so they kept putting it back in. Well, the last time that they did it, it introduced bacteria into the leads back into her heart and threw her back into full on heart failure. So then she had to be basically healthy enough to go back on the list, which took several weeks. That stint in the hospital was about 9 weeks. to get her healthy enough to get her back on the transplant list. And then at this point, her kidneys had started to deplete as a result of the medications that she had been on for the last 6 years. Anyway, so they got her back on the transplant list in July, and then in August is when we were called for the transplant.
Debi, what was it like having your child almost die in front of you? What was that experience like?
Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. I never really accepted that idea. I kind of, the doctor had said to me, "Do you have other children?" And I said, "Yeah, but this one's coming home with me too." That was my attitude. And I never let that wrap around my head that she would not either come home with me or be far into my future. I just didn't let that happen in my brain. Every time I'd start to creep in, I'd throw it back out again.
Well, you have a lot of hope.
Oh yeah,
she's going to get better. Yeah.
Like I said, I never believed that could possibly kill her. I just didn't let that happen to my brain. There was a few times, there was a few moments where I thought, "Oh God, she's going to die," and I had some pretty profound moments that made me change that right back into my half full kind of girl self. I just, "Oh yeah, this is what we're doing." I ran into an old man walking down a hall. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I was walking down the hall in a hospital that she had recently been diagnosed in back when she was 19. This was forever ago. And there was nobody in the hall. And then all of a sudden there's this old man sitting on a bench. There was nobody there. I was walking around crying, not, walking around looking though. And there was no one there. And then all of a sudden there's this old man sitting there with a walker and an oxygen tank. I have no idea. I mean, there's no way he could walk fast. I know that for a fact, even though he was sitting on the bench. I know that. And he saw me crying and said, "Everything's going to be just fine." And I don't know why that affected me like it did, but by the time I got back up to her hospital room, my eyes were dried, and she was crying when I got there. And I said, "Honey, you dry your eyes. We're not going to cry anymore. We're going to love the people we love, and you're going to get better." And that was just that was probably 4 or 5 days after diagnosis originally. And I just had it in my head that from that moment on, it's like, yeah, everything is going to be okay. What are you doing crying? What are you doing thinking this? And, and kind of from then on, everything went in a better pattern.
Wow, that's so interesting. So what did you take that gentleman as?
I really feel like minds have a lot to do with how things go. Your state of mind. You can have two people with the exact same diagnosis, and one can go lay down in bed and die, and the other one can decide to do some skydiving and Rocky Mountain climbing and live 7 years longer.
Yeah. And it seems like, just from how you're describing it, that you had a lot of resiliency and, that parental kind of push, like, this, my work's not done, I need to continue. And it's almost like sometimes you hear those stories of, like, parents and people who have that type of, obviously, caregiving and love, they're compelled to go in that direction, because if they don't, like you said, you can make your own bed and lie in it, and it can get worse. But you're like, no, this has to be done. And your willingness to kind of, both of you are willingness to willing her to get healthy and work through this. And you were also still working as a dental assistant at the time, right?
Oh yeah, I was working full time. Yeah, I was working full time.
And raising your family.
And raising, I had how old was Luke? He must have been 8 at the time. So I had an 8-year-old, a 16-year-old, almost 17, and then the 19-year-old daughter at the time. Wow. So yeah, it was quite interesting, but I have no idea where all my resilience came from, but I definitely have resilience, and I definitely have inner strength.
Did your daughter show that same resiliency, or was she more? Was she a lot different in the sense of how she was expressing her own mortality?
At first, I think she was just super scared, and I'm sure throughout this whole thing, she's been scared here and there. I'm sure of it. I've even heard her say that before, but I think that she was willing to believe that she was going to survive enough to go in that direction, and she tried not to let her brain do that either. We had lots of discussion about that and about how your mind can totally take over, a situation and make you either sicker or better. We had lots of conversation about that. I'm a firm believer in, like I said, where your mind goes can take your body with it. So I don't know. I think that she followed suit is basically what she did. She trusted me for all the years that she trusted me so far. And I think she figured, I think I'd rather follow her than the way my brain was going.
Yeah, and I can see that dynamic happening. Like, she's your daughter, so
we're and close.
Yeah, mom's got an abundance of resiliency and trust and faith and support here, and I need that. She needed that, right? And
absolutely,
we all need those type of situations, and it makes you look at the opposite of like those people who are in those situations who don't have that, and it's like, oh man, I wish those people did have those.
It makes me hurt for somebody who doesn't have. Yeah, it does. It's very, very hurtful to know that somebody could be in that same situation and not have somebody by their side cheerleading them on, because that's kind of what it is being an advocate and a cheerleader, and making sure that when they're giving her medicine, it was what they're supposed to give her, all of it, all of that. It was a little bit of everything. So she saw that I was totally involved and totally, I can't even think of the word, but I was definitely in it to win it.
Yeah, you're there for her 100%.
In it to win it. Yeah, 100%. Definitely.
So. And so what was it like to then find out you actually not only got a heart, but you got both, the heart and I believe it was a kidney?
Yes. Yeah. She had the young lady they probably wouldn't have done it 2 different people. They would have had to have had the same donor for both the heart and the kidney. So they had to wait for a viable, for both of those. And where a lot of times when somebody's going to be transplanted, it's just one organ. And this person who's passed can have just literally that organ that's viable, where Teal ended up having, several. She gave a kidney to somebody else and her corneas, and she just happened to be a young, healthy, other than her epilepsy, she was a young, healthy girl and had viable organs to be able to save other people. And so Amra ended up with a kidney and a heart. Somebody else got her other kidney. So they had to have the same body in order for it to be a good match.
And so was there like a celebration, or was it just like you already had that knowing, so just like, yeah, this is coming?
As far as when she was transplanted?
Yeah. So when the surgery was successful.
Somebody died, and having to have the realization of that, and that somebody, especially for me, coming from the mom standpoint, somebody lost a child. I'm gaining a child from somebody losing a child. That was hard to wrap my head around. Actually, you would think that I'd just be in some kind of celebratory, I was, but yet at the same time, I was mourning for somebody losing their child.
It takes a lot of self-awareness in the moment to realize that, because, you're on the list for so long, and it's like, it doesn't really manifest itself until it happens that you're right, someone had to die for your child to live. And so was that anything that was, how do I put this? Was that something that you had to deal with that you weren't expecting of those emotions?
Yes. Originally, when she was put on the transplant, it was just, oh, good, there's a solution. That kind of thing. And then there's many ways when somebody has heart failure and that their heart's just not going to work for them anymore. There's machines that they can put people on, and they have to stay in the hospital. There's many options, but for her to have that as the option versus those other options was good. So that was elating at the time. But then once you actually get the call, someone's actually passed away, and that this is going to transpire. She actually said that to me on the way down there. She said, Mom, somebody had to die. And so that her realization hit then too, on the way down there, literally on our drive down there.
Wow. Yeah, that gets pretty real. Like I'm trying to put myself in those shoes and say, I wonder if I needed something and someone had to die for it. I think it would happen the same way as it happened to you guys, where it would start to manifest. And I would just think about that person like, wow, they passed away. It's a living being. And
Exactly.
it's not just a movie or a TV show. This is real life.
Well, and
Um,
I ended up saying to her at the time, I said, honey, they were going to die anyway, but they get to help people. And that's a fabulous thing. That's wonderful. And that's kind of where we left it right then. And pretty much the rest of the car ride was pretty quiet. We just kind
mm.
of melded on that.
Yeah,
know,
that probably definitely changes it. Whereas obviously they've agreed to have their organs given, which I'm just thinking the opposite. It wouldn't work if you forced people. That would be terrible. But this situation, yeah, that you have the okay, but it's still obviously sad and something you have to you reflected on.
Oh, definitely. Most definitely.
And do you know, I don't know much about donation of organs in the States. So did Teal have to sign off on something before, or was it her mother that
Her
agreed to
parents
it?
were able to
Oh, I
make
see.
that decision. If you're not a donor on your license here, or your voting, or however your state goes, into the donor, you can register through donor networks. But if you're not registered that way, or through your driver's license, the person who is whoever's making the decisions for you, your parents, your spouse, that person then becomes that advocate for you.
And so is this why you do the talk that you do? Is it to raise awareness for people to agree on their
Yes.
license? Yeah.
Yes, that, and to allow the people who deal. So far we've basically spoke to people who have something to do with transplantation. Like recently we spoke for the financier people, people who deal with the financial end of it. There was some medical people there, but a lot of them were the people who make sure that the money's available for the people who are actually donating, and so they don't have a bill coming to them in the end of all that. And there's a lot of that, but they don't hear the real life, my daughter almost died, her daughter did die scenario. I mean, and the fact that we know each other and that we speak together, and it's just a kind of a fascinating story. Her and I are very, very different from each other, but yet we managed to fit like peas and carrots.
No, that's great. And I'm happy that you guys did meet. I'm curious, how did that happen? Like, because I didn't think that they gave you the information of the individual who died.
Well, you
Um,
go through the Donor Network Association, basically runs intermission and mediates for that. Both parties are allowed to write something, wish contact, just acknowledge the fact that they want contact. And then it's up to the other person whether or not they want that.
hmm.
So it's totally, you can totally do it, but it has to be agreeable to both parties.
So this worked out really good that you both agreed. And
Well,
so,
yeah,
yeah.
her father, Teal's father, had actually written a letter to all the donors, and sent pictures to say who she was and what she did. And my daughter had been, I bet you she threw away 20 letters that she had started thrown away. And until she got that, she wasn't able to actually put into words what she needed to put into words. And she wrote the most eloquent, beautiful letter to her family. I can't even read the first line without bawling. So I think it just took a minute. I think it was over a course of about 3 or 4 years, actually, before they actually connected. And it was actually 5 years before we met. So it took some time. It took some time, and I think it's available to every single donor and every single recipient. It's just a matter of whether or not both people want to do that, because some people aren't comfortable with that.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I like how there is that mediation process, but I just never knew the process. So I'm happy I get to learn a little bit more about what's involved with that and how people
they're a fabulous set of people. The people who deal with any part of this. It takes a certain individual to be able to, eloquently deal with this, passing and hey, can we take their organs? And, it takes certain people to be able to do that. It really does. And the people who are involved, I have not met one single person that isn't just a fabulous individual.
That's amazing. It's amazing. You're meeting so many different people. I'm curious, what was it like first meeting Suzanne and her? So I don't know if her father was there too, but what was that?
No, it was just Suzanne.
Just Suzanne. Yeah. What was that like for you? Because did you have like emotions going in? Was there any hesitation?
No. My daughter had asked me, she said, hey, I'm finally ready to meet them. And we're going to go down and have my 5-year checkup, which is also close to where Suzanne lives. We had to go into San Francisco. We live about 3.5 hours from there, but that's where we go for checkups. She goes now. I don't go anymore. But anyway, we were going to go for her 5-year checkup. So they made arrangements to meet, and she wanted me to be with her. So that's how we ended up meeting. It was an arranged thing that had been arranged for a month or two.
Nice. And I'm guessing it must have went well.
Yes, we actually met at the beach in San Francisco where they strew her ashes. We walked on that beach and visited for a while, so that was quite something to be on at the ocean where her ashes were, and just it was very very significant. And then we had dinner, and we got to know each other a little bit better. And then after dinner, Suzanne had her laptop, and she pulled open her laptop and let us listen to one of the last recordings of her daughter singing. Wow. And all 4 of us just stood there and bawled. And my daughter actually said, I know her, I know her. I've seen this girl before. I know her. And that was just amazing.
Was it helpful in kind of maybe adding to the recovery and healing of your daughter and yourself and your family through that process? I would imagine it would add to the narrative, because now you see faces and you're hearing the voice of the individuals who helped, and Teal, obviously.
I think for a minute in time, it crushed me, because, the realization that poor girl, it just, that was bad for me.
That's tough to see no matter what, you see a
oh
mother.
My God, she was a beautiful young lady that had so much to give and offer.
Yeah. Was there a bit of guilt, actually, now I think about it?
Yeah. Yes, and still probably a little, because Suzanne's so strong and she has just been through so much. So I have, mixed feelings about, not anymore necessarily, because her and I have come to pass, without any of that. I've moved on from the guilt, and now I appreciate the fact that her mom shares this with me and that I share with her, and I think it helps her heal a lot. And I'm totally game if that's what that does.
Yeah, I would imagine. And she was obviously receptive to meeting you guys and doing all that. And yeah, you could see maybe that would add to her healing as well in that capacity. Wow.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it does. We talk about that. I ask her, does it help you? And she said, absolutely. It continues to be therapy all the time. My relationship with her, she doesn't have a whole big relationship with my daughter. We've met, she's had dinner, we've done a few things, and they, connect once in a while. But my relationship with her is the closeness to her daughter. Interestingly enough.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I heard a rumor on the last podcast that you've even had some dreams of Teal.
Actually, yes, I have. Not for a while. I think I did the other night, but like I said, I sleep so terribly that unless I'm kind of in tune to it and kind of thinking about it a little bit. It's caught me off guard before, but she actually told me that I need to work with women in that state of almost being awake. It was like I could see her plain as day. It was her smiling at me, telling me that I need to work with women, that basically that I needed to change my life to help myself and to help her mom. I got a couple different messages from her, a couple different times over a span of about 3 months. Her dream, I guess, I'm not sure. It was very odd to me because other than my parents, I hadn't had anybody intervene with me after life like that. And so I didn't know, her and I didn't know each other. My connection to her is her mom. So it was very odd to me that she would come knocking on my door kind of thing. I thought it was very odd, but it was very real too. At the same time, she was in my dreams, definitely.
No, I think that's like really amazing to hear, because you're right. You didn't have this bond with her, but yet there she is in your dreams, like giving you advice on like things you need to do in your own life, not only for her mom, but also for yourself. And so at that time when you're having those dreams, what was it that you're going through that this was going to provide that extra sense of meaning?
Well, for one thing, we were getting ready to I was kind of contemplating whether or not I was going to do the speech and speak and, kind of get involved with this whole process. I was in turmoil a little bit about that. What do I really have to offer kind of thought process. And then I had a full-time job at the time that was just kicking my butt physically, leaning over patients, for hours at a time. It doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal, but it is to your body after 35 years of it. So I was going through, what can I do different to make the kind of money that I make that, can sustain my life? I don't want to retire, but I definitely need to get out of what I'm doing. So I was going through a lot of different things at the time. So she was kind of kicking me through it, really, oddly enough.
No, I think that's funny because we get guidance in sometimes the most mysterious ways and most interesting ways to lead our path. And it's kind of amazing. Sometimes they come through dreams. And so yours did. So did you have any more dreams after that of Teal? Or was it just that first initial you making that decision to do the talks? And
a little bit after that, I remember having, and as a matter of fact, Suzanne and I were just talking about this the other day, and it kind of made me remember. She took notes while I was talking to her about this, and I have yet to see these notes because I don't remember. I told her like the next day things that she told me, and Suzanne didn't give me the notes. You're going to have to give me the notes because I don't remember what I told you. Well, it's a dream, and when I do it right away or write it down, and she's so good about taking notes that she wrote it down. And so I remember some of it, but I know she told me that her and I were both Sagittarius and that she understood me because of that. Oh, and then the other day, Suzanne and I were talking, and I said, "Oh yeah, Teal and I had that conversation." She told me that we're both Sagittarius, and she said, "What?" And I said, "Oh yeah, that was a while ago." And so things like that just kind of crop up. Oh yeah, I did dream about that. It's interesting. Dreams are interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Do you like look at horoscopes a lot? Like, is that?
No.
Oh no, it's just.
No.
It's just I wonder. Did Teal? Do you know?
Probably. Yeah.
Okay.
She was into spiritual guides and horoscopes, and she was into that a lot.
Oh, so that's really wild that it's part of her personality that was coming through, not just your personality, because you didn't really care, I guess, but it was like more her, and it's like a little bit of a joke at the same time.
It was. It was like, oh, here's her humor too. Yeah. So exactly.
That's amazing. No, I think it's great. And I'm glad you share them too, because I can only imagine the healing that gives Suzanne to hear this stuff.
I would think. It was the oddest thing. The first time I told her about it, I said, you're going to think I'm loon, but this is what's going on. And she's like, I do not. She's been around me too. So anyway.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, because on the other, like on our, when she came on the podcast, she had like 1,000 dreams that she was sharing. I was like, wow, like most people don't have that many, but she was all into it. So it's great that you opened up because it was definitely part of her life that she could connect with.
Well, yeah, and when I told, she hadn't really told me much about her connection that way. A little bit. She told me a little bit about, how she's kind of felt her presence and that kind of thing, but never enough that I would just, if I hadn't had that dream, I would have never discussed that with her, probably. But because I had that first dream and went, Teal came to my dreams last night, kind of thing. And then she started sharing with me the things that she has had happen and dreams that she's had.
I think that's the beauty of just opening up about these experiences that you have, because you don't know what it's going to bring about in conversation wise with the people in front of you and what kind of dreams they've had and experienced. And it's just,
True.
that's why I love the podcast and asking these questions, because most people don't ever get a chance to share them or talk about them. But here we are. And it's like how I'm so fascinated with it and how it can bring people together in different ways and bring healing in different ways and continue that bond.
Definitely. It keeps her here.
So what was it like entering into, let's call it your new career almost? And how were you, I guess, fulfilled differently than your old career?
Well, kind of started back with a year ago, a couple days ago, when the campfire took place and my house burnt down and my job went away. That kind of started the snowball of effect. I did go back to work in his temporary office afterwards, but it was just evident that my body couldn't do it anymore. So I ended up, probably 5 months into it, I guess I've been off work since May is when I decided I needed to retire and move on. There was a lot of political stuff going on in the office that I didn't want to, it was just, no, I don't need this.
It seemed like the right time for you to kind of switch gears. Yeah. And, like you said earlier, the body takes, these movements and joints, these things, after a while, it takes its toll. My dad worked job for 30 years, his knees, he's got problems with it and this and that. And you were saying like your hips and knees and whatnot, but it must have been, obviously something you needed. The fire happened, but it also kind of allowed you to switch gears, or forced you to switch gears almost.
Yes, it did. And I'm okay with it now. At first I was like, wow, this is a punch in the nose, but it seems like that's just kind of how things go. Life's storms just kind of punch you in the nose.
Yeah, and you had the resiliency to move on from those. What was it that it gave you that was different from your old career?
Well, now I have freedom to do what I want to do. Now I can pick and choose what I want to do, and I'm not financially strapped, so I planned accordingly. As far as it's a little earlier than I planned on being off work, but I still planned accordingly, and for the last several years, I've been planning to retire 10 years from now, but I'm still. And if you ask my honey, my worst day of my life was the best day of his, because I moved in with him.
Why was it the worst day of your life? You like your freedom, eh? You gotta sleep next to someone who snores.
Exactly. I was in Cancun with him when the fire took place, so I wasn't home. My dog was with somebody, so she wasn't home either. And the night before the fire, we kind of talked about, hey, maybe this next spring, maybe we could, think about moving in together and that kind of thing. And then the very next day, the whole town of Paradise burnt down, and he didn't tell me about it until way later in the day. I didn't have any kind of news media. I didn't have anything with me. I was snorkeling, I was playing. And finally he said, you know what, everybody on this boat knows, but you and the whole town of Paradise burnt down. And then about 5 minutes later, our plan has moved up. So you want to move in with me when we get back? I'm like, well, I don't have a thing, so sure.
Wow. I'm actually really interested in understanding what that's like to go through, to like hear about not only that your house is burnt down, but your town and all your friends that in the houses that have you've come to know. Like, what was that all like for you?
It's still kind of crazy. I went up there, probably about a week ago, and just drove around and went to. As a matter of fact, I went up there with Suzanne, so it's been a little longer than a week ago. She wanted to drive up there because of her book. She wanted to add that into it, so we drove up there and drove around, and we went to the property and oh my goodness, it's just still so surreal that I still think, did that really happen? I mean, it just seems so, I don't know. It just seems so bizarre that could just happen like that a whole town could burn down and, 18,000 homes and 52,000 people. And it just seems so out there that could happen. I had things, antiques, my mom's letters, my children's photo albums. I was the keeper of the stuff, so that's the bummer part, is that, that I don't have my mom's things. But other than that, I'm just glad I wasn't home, and I'm glad I do not have the memories that everybody that I know that live there have from driving out of that inferno.
Yeah, it's a thing that I think most of us, well, let's just speak for most of us where we're North America. It's tough to kind of wrap your head around it because those type of things don't happen very often. So, and usually not to you. So it's always a little bit like you seeing it on the news, or we're
Sure.
seeing it on the news, like, oh, look at those fires. But when you, like you described, when you're living it and breathing it, it's still a shock. It's still like, wow, can't believe this has gone on. Was it difficult kind of losing the stuff, or do you have mixed feelings about it?
Like I said, only my mom's things and my kids' pictures, little notes that my kids wrote to me that told me how fabulous I am that I'll never see again. I'll never have one of them write that again until I'm maybe almost dying. Oh, you're the fabulous person.
You gotta force them. This is what I want.
When they're 7, they think you're great. So, but other than that, I am perfectly, I'm okay. And I didn't have to, like I said, I don't have those horrid memories of driving through flames thinking I wasn't going to make it through. Yeah. I don't have that. And I feel very, very blessed and grateful that I don't.
And what was it like? 'Cause what was in your mom's letters that you cherish so much? Because your mom died previous to that, right?
Yeah, she died in 2008, and the fire's in 2018, so 10 years later, actually. Just my mom, same thing, just would write to me because we lived several hours away from each other at any given time during her life. And up until the last 2 years, she actually moved to Paradise to be closer to me and ended up passing in Paradise, like I said, in 2008. So I don't know, just her handwriting, something silly like that, just her handwriting that told me that, she missed me, and that, I don't know, it just the idea that it was something that she wrote.
Yeah, very unique, very intimate, unique, and you can't replicate it. It
No.
is. I'm trying to think of what I would miss if my house burned down. What would I miss?
Well, my son had evacuated from Reading from the car fire about 3 months before, and it made me kind of gather things together. And I gathered those notes, my kids' pictures, and I made probably about a 2-foot square box of all these things, files, pink slips, all this stuff that I thought, I need to be prepared in case I need to do this too. Fire season's not over, and I should just do this anyway. Well, that box was in the corner of my bedroom, had my mom's last ring in it, all kinds of stuff in it. Yeah. So I had forethought to do that, but it didn't do me any good because I wasn't there.
Yeah, just happened, right? Just yeah. They quickly. Fires come very quickly, and you didn't know. You're on vacation. You're thinking about something else? Thinking about moving in with your boyfriend?
Yep. Well, actually, he was thinking about it more than me, if truth be told.
So how is it now?
I don't
Now
like
that you,
my little house.
how is it now that you moved in?
Oh, fine. We're good.
It's good. Yeah, he doesn't snore too much.
I sleep with sleep things in my ear to listen to sleep music.
Oh, that's very good. That's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're little soft little earbuds that don't bother me, and I just turn music on, and the dog snores, he snores. You know, I'm pretty sure the dog snores louder.
That's funny.
So,
Yeah, it's
but I have a
interesting.
hard time sleeping anyway, so I do that just to at least not have that be part of the reason I'm not sleeping, because I don't want to wake up mad.
No, you don't.
So it's my own internal thing that's making me not sleep. I can only be mad at me.
He wakes up well rested, turns over. You're just angry.
Exactly, because he can sleep through anything on a rock.
Yeah, it's so wild. I'm thinking too, Sean, about, just what I would miss, in case of a fire and stuff. And the writing. And it's interesting that I don't have, like, my mom never, or dad, like, people don't write me letters anymore. It's not something that I have. It's all emails or, voicemails we call, or more text messages than anything that I have now. So it'd be like,
no wonder you were so curious.
yeah, because if maybe my phone, if it burnt or something, then I would lose all that stuff, which would be the similar thing. But yeah, like, I just don't have that. I think when my dad died, was it 11 years ago? I only had like really one thing that he wrote me, and it was basically when I was a kid, and he said basically, take care of your sister, love, Dad. And like, that was really it. And I still have that, but I didn't really cherish it until like later on. But I didn't have full letters or anything. So just interesting how the times have changed on how we communicate. And even, like, you're right, the how people write is meaningful, because you can tell they're writing over someone else.
Oh, definitely. Her handwriting was significant over anybody else's. And her sister's, funny enough, I just was in Minneapolis giving a speech with Suzanne, and I have relatives in Wisconsin. So I went ahead and stayed a few days over and visited. And I came across my aunt's writing, and it looked a lot like my mom's. And it made me realize that, so when I got home, instead of emailing, I sent an actual card that had my handwriting in it, that she totally appreciated because of that era, Now I could email any one of my friends and they'd be fine with it. But for her, I know that handwritten card made a huge difference to her.
Yeah, you're right. I am old enough to remember writing letters myself. Love letters to women. But there's an intimacy there. There's a thing there. And even photographs, like, we don't process photographs the same way as we used to. Like, I have a ton of old pictures and stuff like that. You have the reels, you have the negatives. And if you lose those, I'm not going to get any more new photos of, all the relatives or whatever, my family, and those are the only things that you can't really replace. Like, that, now that I think about it, there's nothing else. Like, clothes, whatever, go ahead. Computers, doesn't matter.
Yeah, the clothes was fun. I got to buy clothes and boots and shoes. That part was okay. That didn't bother me at all. For a while there, Amazon and American Eagle was coming every day.
Was there one item of clothing or accessory that you really miss? Maybe a favorite hat?
Yes, actually, funny that you mentioned a hat. It was from Alaska. It was my fly fishing hat. I don't fly fish, but it was a fly fishing hat. And
those are cool.
And it was, it came from Sitka, Alaska, and it was just the coolest hat. So yeah, that's something that I miss.
And so I'm curious, have you ever had a dream of your old house, or any of those letters or anything like that?
I had a dream of, because funny enough, the day that I left to go to Cancun, I walked back in the house, and oddly enough, I took a panoramic scan of everything. I didn't just walk out of the house, lock the door, and just go. I went back in for something, like just some personal item I went back in for. But when I went to go leave, I stopped and just took a panoramic view of the whole, not that it was big or anything, but just like looked at everything, weirdly enough. And then I shut the door. And I have a dream of doing that once in a while.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Every once in a while, like during the last year, I bet probably 2 or 3 times some version of me looking at everything and shutting that door.
Are those comforting when you wake up? I'm curious. I've never heard of that. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not stuck on any of that. You know what I mean? I'm not stuck. A lot of people that I know that were in that situation because they drove through it and everything, they're more stuck in that than I am. I was gone. I didn't have to, be part of the evacuation. I didn't have to be, part of that for at least 3 days. I didn't come home for 3 more days after that. And it was real smoky and everything. And my stuff was gone, but it was not the realization like how everybody I know that drove through there has. And so I don't know if it's just that I'm a really resilient, strong person, or if it's because of that. Either way, I have moved on and I'm fine.
Is it interesting or exciting for you to get new things and maybe start to collect new memories and stuff?
Well, it's funny because my son has, I have a grandson, and then he also raises her daughter. And she's learning how to write. And she wrote me a little note saying, Nana, I love you or whatever. And I kept that. And it's funny because it's, for her, I told her the other day, I still have it. And she said, I don't even know, looked at me like, I don't even know what you're talking about. It didn't mean anything to her. But I will hang on to that because it's like the only piece of paper that I have that anybody's written me anything. So I have it and I'm not going to let go of it. I'm going to keep it. So I think so. I think that in a way it's like starting anew, starting fresh. I have lots of pictures already that I've taken over the last year. And I printed some pictures that I already had on my phone, just things like that. So sometimes exciting, sometimes sad.
Yeah, because obviously people really love their stuff, and it almost becomes like a legacy for them. Like you hear stories of elderly people or people dying on their deathbed, and they're giving away things, and maybe they mean a lot to them, but maybe not so much to their relatives. But I think that like maybe there's an element of fear of like in your situation, you don't have all that. Like, will people remember me? Like I'm. It's almost like I've been, in a way, if you remained in Cancun, that trace of where you lived and everything's gone. And so, is there like a little bit of maybe melancholy, tinge of sadness there about that kind of transfer of legacy, almost?
Yes, definitely. Because I always thought, God, not always. I very seldom thought about dying, and still don't think about dying, but I think once in a while, well, if my kids went through my house, they'd find this, they'd see this, and it would make them happy that I still had this or whatever. Because I narrowed it down over the years. My box of kids stuff got smaller as time went on, just because I didn't want to hang on to every crayon, mark on a piece of paper and, that kind of thing. I got to where I was like, okay, you need to go through this stuff and narrowed it down to a fairly small box. But I always thought it would be really cool for them to go through that box, and they don't have that box now.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of years left to kind of build that new, right? You have a new legacy you got to start working on.
I'm curious, who would you have given that fly fishing hat to?
My middle child, my son.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you bought a new one since?
I bought one hat since, but not a And it's funny because I've been to Oregon, Idaho, Minneapolis, and Wisconsin all in the last probably 6-8 weeks. And I didn't buy a hat anywhere, which I usually do, which was kind of funny. So I usually buy a hat everywhere I go, and I had quite a collection of them. And it's almost like, no, I don't want a big collection anymore.
So I'm curious, have you ever had a dream of your parents since they they died. Oh, you have?
Yes. Not so much anymore. My dad, I had this really weird dream, and I was like very convinced that it actually happened. Shortly after my dad died, I had a very vivid dream that he had changed the radio station in my car to a station that I don't listen to, and had dedicated this song to me, and it played this whole song, and it was like a song that him and I had listened to when I was a kid, so it was a very significant song. And when I woke up, it felt like I had just heard the song and that it was all very, very real. Other than that, I had only had a few just very, very brief, like, sightings of my dad in dreams, that kind of thing. And with my mom, gosh, I had lots of dreams with her, but mostly I would dream about calling her after I got off work and having these vivid dreams of our conversations. I would call every day when I would get off work, and my goal was to make her laugh, because my stepdad had told me at one point that I was the only one that made her laugh. So I would aim to do that every day before I hung up. And once I got a couple giggles out of her, I would hang up and, call her the next day or see her or whatever. But I had dreams about having those conversations, and they were very, very real. Like I just had a conversation with her. I was probably talking in my sleep even.
Oh, those are so interesting.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to hear her laugh?
Yes. That was why it was so real to me, because I heard her laugh, and I like had this whole conversation that I didn't even really have with her before that still made her laugh. It was like not even like a repeated conversation that we had. It would be like this whole other conversation, but my goal was still to hear her little giggle, and then I'd be okay. Okay, I got to hear her laugh today.
That's pretty sweet. I like that. No, it's we forget, like, hearing people, like, just like everyone has like their own writing style. Everyone has their own kind of laugh too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And now when I try to think of her laugh, I have a really hard time, and it bothers me that I can't. So it's almost like I need to have one of those dreams so I can hear her laugh, Maybe I will in the next few nights now.
That's right. Hopefully, it'd be cool if you could record your dreams, so then you would only need the one dream, and then you just replay it and hear her laugh. Yeah.
That would be cool.
Do you remember what song that your dad played for you?
Yeah, it was Cotton Jenny by Anne Murray.
Oh, nice.
Isn't that funny? Just an old song. You probably don't even know who Anne Murray or Cotton Jenny is.
Isn't she Canadian?
But I do remember the song, and that was the one it was.
Snowbirds, Anne Murray.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh yeah. Yeah, music is special, right? And now, you have that kind of moving forward where hopefully if you listen to that dream, definitely you're going to think about your father. Sorry, if you listen to that song, you're definitely going to
Oh yeah, every time even in a grocery store, I'll hear it, and it just, oh, hi, Dad.
That's so nice. Wow. So you have a lot of different dream experiences just throughout, and I think that's very interesting, and they seem to be more or less comforting in different ways, and you give guidance or laughter or music. You have like a little bit of everything.
I do. Actually, yeah. I do. Which is nice.
And so, since you've had so many dreams, we still got to ask the question. So, what dream would you want to have tonight, if you could, of someone that has died?
It would still be my mom. It would be my mom, and I would want to know if she. My biggest question would be to somebody who passed is, do you get to meet up with the souls that you knew? do you get to see people that you knew? Even if it's just a twinkling, or hey, I know you, even though you're not in human form anymore. I would want to know that, because there's a couple of her friends that have passed, and my dad and her parents, and it would be kind of neat to know if they got to connect somehow.
Would you just want to know a yes or no, or would you want her to explain everything?
Oh, I'm not explain. We got to know in detail.
Now that I have her on the line.
Exactly. Yeah, I would want to know in detail. What do you talk about? What do you do? Do you get to drink tea? I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, and it's at the heart of kind of what it means to be human. Are those connections? Are those things? It's not the stuff. It's the people you're around, and I think a lot of us kind of have that thought in our head, like, these connections are so important to me. This love is so important to me. I wonder if I'll be able to, have it again. And that's the mystery, right?
It is the mystery for sure. And having those, like you said, the things that you have aren't as important as the connections that you have by any means. And the connections, sure, you take pictures, sure, you have a little hat, sure, you have this and that, but the people that I feel very fortunate that the people in my life, I mean, I have a good group of people that are supportive, and I try to be supportive of them. And my kids, I have a grandchild now, that comes running towards me, that, wants to jump up in my arms. And I think that's just the apple of the whole deal. It's like, just coming around to knowing that I raised 3 children that are all productive and, great in society, and they're, doing well, and that the legacy, goes on because I have grandchildren. And it's just a really neat experience to have love and family and people, just people.
Absolutely. And, I just want to say thank you. We're going to wrap up here, but thank you so much for the work you're doing for organ donation. It's a message that needs to be told, to really help people like us who don't know too much about it, and understand it more, so that we do understand how much it helps people, how significant it is. And moving forward, who knows, right?
Well, we're all terminal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
We're
We're
all
dying
terminal. So
every
if you
day. We're
can do
dying.
something with it, great.
Yeah. And I might need an organ someday, or Joshua, God forbid, but those things might happen. And to know that there are people like you, and the courage that you've shown in reaching out to the family, Teal's family, and to get to know her, that takes courage. That takes a lot of love and compassion. And that shows a lot of resiliency. And again, what you went through and how you describe it is really interesting to hear. You seem like a logical person who's got a lot of love and resiliency and courage, and you've obviously given that to your family. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Debbie. Again, it's been an amazing show, and really interesting to hear your life story, and what's gone on in your life, and how you've overcome some of those things along with your daughter.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Please check out our platform at griefdreams.ca for more information on the topic. We added a donation button, and there are perks to those who donate. If you have Facebook, you can join the Grief Dreams group. You can share your dreams or hear more dreams of others. And we are on Twitter and Instagram at Grief Dreams and at the Grief Dreams Podcast. And with love and gratitude from us to you.
I have questions. I have introduced myself. You have introduced yourself. This is a very good conversation.